Alright, so I got pretty good reviews from most of you guys last time I did a video, so I thought I'd go ahead and do another one for you. So I'll move through this pretty quickly, and then if you have questions you can just ask in class tomorrow. So the first question asks us to use direct and synthetic substitution to solve for f of 2 and then find m behavior. So direct substitution you've been doing since, you know, second grade. You just plug in 2 for x and solve. So everywhere there's an x, I'm putting in a 2. And then I'm just going to simplify this. So that's 2 times 8, 4 times 4, minus 4 minus 4. And you end up with 24. So that's direct substitution. Synthetic is when we take that x value, put it on the outside of my structure, put my coefficients up top, so 2, 4, negative 2, negative 4, and then go through the process. I carry the first term down, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, and add. So you see for both I got 24. Then it also wants me to determine the m behaviors, which is really a completely unrelated question to the previous. So for this, all I'm looking at is my degree, which is 3. So that's an odd degree. And then I want to look at my coefficient, which is 2. So I have a positive leading coefficient. So what that tells me is this graph is going to behave identically to the graph of y equals x. So I just draw that in there so I have something to look at, and then I write as x approaches infinity, f of x approaches infinity, and as x approaches negative infinity, f of x also approaches negative infinity. And that's all you had to do for that one. For 2, it wants us to factor. Right away, we should recognize this is this difference of cubes. 64 is the 4 cubed, x cubed is x, and 125 is 5. So using the formula, I get 4x minus 5. And then I want to do a squared. I have to be careful to square the entire a value, which is 16x squared, plus ab. Don't worry about your signs, just follow the formula. So plus 20x plus b squared is 25. And this is not going to be able to become any simpler. So that is just your answer. You can't simplify any further. Again, here we want to factor the equation. As soon as we see we have 4 terms, you should automatically in your brain be jumping to grouping. When I have 4 terms, that's when I want to factor by grouping. So I'm going to group my first 2 terms together. See if I can do this. Second 2 terms together. And then I take out the greatest common factor from each part. So I can take out x squared. I'm left with x plus 4. Take out negative 25. I'm left with x plus 4. So my result is x squared minus 25, x plus 4. Now a lot of you guys are going to stop here, but it says factor completely. So I have to recognize that x squared minus 25 is a difference of squares. So that can become x minus 5, x plus 5 times x plus 4, which would be my final answer. Here again we want to factor. The way I explain this is it's essentially a quadratic on steroids. So I think of it as 3x squared plus 19x plus 6, which all of you guys should be able to solve. And really all I'm doing is replacing the 2 with a 4 and this 1 here with a 2. So, and I'm just going to make those adjustments throughout the problem. So to solve this, I have a coefficient other than 1. So I'm going to do the ACB method, which gives me 18 and 19. So I want 2 values that multiply to 18, add up to 19. So that's going to be 18 and 1. So I just need to go through. Now, rather than making this x squared in front, it's going to become x to the 4th, because that's what my problem has. And then now rather than being plus 18x as I was writing. It's 18x squared plus x squared plus 6. Again, just as I did in the last problem, now I have 4 terms, so I can group. Take out 3x squared. I'm left with x squared plus 6. Take out a positive 1. X squared plus 6. So my final answer would be 3x squared plus 1 and x squared plus 6. And I can't simplify that any further, so I am finished. 5, it wants me to use long division to divide, so I'm going to set this up. X squared minus 3x is my divisor. It's a nice straight line going into x to the 4th minus 6x cubed plus 10x squared minus 3x. So I have 2 terms here. I'm going to look at my first 2 terms, and I want to try and knock out this x to the 4th. So what can I multiply x squared by to get x to the 4th? And the answer is x squared. So I would end up with x to the 4th minus 3x to the 3rd, and then I'm going to subtract. So x to the 4ths go away. Negative 6x cubed minus negative 3x cubed is really a plus, so I get negative 3x cubed plus 10x squared. Again, I go through the process. What can I multiply x squared by to get negative 3x cubed? Negative 3x. So that gives me negative 3x cubed plus 9x squared. Subtract that. Cubes cancel. I get x squared minus 3x, which is actually really nice because that's what my divisor was. So I get plus 1, multiply out, subtract, and I actually get a remainder of 0. So my answer is just x squared minus 3x plus 1. For number 6, I use synthetic division. So here, the important thing to realize is if my denominator is x minus 4, I'm going to use 4 as my 0, not negative 4. The sign has to change. I put my coefficients up, go through synthetic, and you see here I have a remainder of 2. That's fine because all I'm doing is dividing. It didn't tell me that 4 was a 0. It just tells me to divide by x minus 4. So there's nothing wrong with having a remainder. My highest degree here is 3. So now with my first coefficient, I'm going to go down 1 degree. So 1x squared plus 10x plus 30. And then I'm going to add 2 over my remainder over my divisor, x minus 4. And although that's not the prettiest problem in the world, that is your answer. Here we want to find my 0. So they tell me I have a 0 at 2. And the easiest way to do this is to divide using synthetic division and then factor your result. So I have 2 going on the outside. When I'm doing synthetic division or synthetic substitution, I need to make sure I account for the missing term. So here I don't have a square term, so I need to add in a 0 after the 1 in order for this to work. So I get 1, 2, 2, 4, negative 15, negative 30, and 0. So you see I got a remainder of 0. That should happen every time. I go down 1 degree, get x squared minus 2x plus 2x minus 15 times my original factor, which was x minus 2. This here is a quadratic that factors nicely to x plus 5, x minus 3, x minus 2. And then I'm just going to set each one of those separately equal to 0. So I'd get negative 5, 3, and as I already knew, 2 is a 0 as well. Same exact process here. They give me 5. Here I'm not missing any terms, so I just have 1, negative 5, 3, negative 15. Bring down the 1, 5, 0, 0, 3, 15, 0. So again, I get a remainder of 0. So now again, I go down 1 degree. So x squared plus 0x plus 3 times x minus 5. And I'm solving for my zeros here, so I'm going to set these each separately equal to 0. So x squared plus 3 equals 0. X minus 5 equals 0. So this is going to work out really nice and get x equals 5, and they already told us that. Here I have to subtract 3 and then take the square root. Anytime I take a square root, it's plus or minus. And you notice I have a negative underneath a radical, so I need to pull out my I. So I'll write plus or minus I root 3. You could write plus or minus root 3I. I'm indifferent on the matter, and then 5. The last question tells us we have a rectangular prism. Let's see if I have a shape. I don't know if there's any 3D shapes. Doesn't look like it. So I'll just draw it. So I have my base. Let's see, this is not going to be pretty. This could be another. Let's see, just connect all these. Nice and ugly. Alright, so I have something like this, and it tells me that my height is 4 more than the width, so I'm just going to make this my height. Make my width x, and my length is 2 less than the width, so that's x minus 2. Doesn't really matter where each one goes. And then it tells me that the prism can hold 96 cubic centimeters, so I know that the volume of this has to equal 96. So all I'm going to do is multiply my length times my width times my height and set it equal to 96. And then I just go through, distribute, so I get x squared minus 2x times x plus 8 equals 96. X to the third plus 8x squared minus 2x squared is plus 6x squared minus 16x, and then I'm going to go ahead and subtract 96 while I'm at it. That gives me 4 terms, which I like because I can factor by grouping. So then I can factor out x squared from here. I get x plus 6, factor out a negative 16, x plus 6. So I'm left with x squared minus 16 and x plus 6. Now x squared minus 16 is a perfect square, or I'm sorry, a difference of squares, so that can become x minus 4, x plus 4, x plus 6. I'm going to set each of those equal to 0. The only one that makes sense is x equals 4 because the others are negative. But I'm not done. I have to take that and plug it back in up top. So my x then is 4. So that's my width. My length is 4 minus 2, so that's 2. So I have 2 by 4 by my height, which is 4 plus 8. So 2 by 4 by 12 is the answer to the first question. And then it tells me that they're adding a 1 centimeter shell on each side. And I have to be careful here because they're adding the shell both to this side and this side. So I'm going to have to add 2 centimeters to each of my dimensions. So really all that's going to do is make it 4 by 6 by 14. Alright, so that's all the problems. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Any questions you have, just bring to class tomorrow and we'll go over them.